In May 2013, a 29-year-old NSA contractor sitting alone in a Hong Kong hotel room made a decision that would change the relationship between governments and their citizens forever. He had a thumb drive. He had terabytes of classified documents. And he had the full knowledge that the moment those files reached the public, the most powerful surveillance apparatus ever constructed would turn its entire weight against him. Edward Snowden plugged it in anyway, because what he had seen inside the machinery of American intelligence was so far beyond what any free society should tolerate that staying silent felt like the greater crime. For years, Snowden had been the perfect insider. NSA contractor, CIA veteran, top-level security clearance. A man trusted with access to systems that most Americans didn't know existed. PRISM pulled data directly from the servers of Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook. Your emails, your photos, your private messages, your search history, all flowing into government databases without a warrant, without probable cause, without your knowledge. Xcore allowed any analyst to type any name and pull up a complete digital portrait of that person's life. Boundless Informant tracked billions of communications every single day. The NSA wasn't watching the terrorists. It was watching everyone. And documents later showed that 90% of those surveilled were ordinary Americans, not the intended targets. Just people who happened to exist in the digital age. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper sat before the United States Senate and was asked directly, "Does the NSA collect data on millions of Americans?"
There are actually very serious ethical things the CIA gets into sometimes. For example, there's a situation in which we wanted to recruit a private banker who worked on accounts for certain collection of Middle Eastern countries, because they could give us access to who moves the money, who are the high rollers, what are they spending it on, and that can then enable other recruitments and that sort of thing.
The man who lied to Congress about the largest domestic surveillance program in American history now appears on television to offer his opinions about government accountability. Snowden had tried to do it the right way. He had filed internal reports, raised concerns through proper channels, followed every protocol available to him. The machine was not broken. It was working exactly as designed, and it had decided that the truth was too dangerous to allow. The files he gave to journalists Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras in that Hong Kong hotel room detonated across the world. The United Nations discovered it had been surveilled. UNICEF and Médecins du Monde were on the target list. The NSA had set up a fake Facebook server to intercept connections. It had built a program called MonsterMind, designed to automatically launch cyber attacks without human authorization. It had spied on oil companies, foreign governments, and at least 35 world leaders whose phones it had been quietly monitoring for years. These were not threats to national security. Washington moved with the speed of a government that had been caught. The Justice Department charged Snowden with 2 counts under the Espionage Act before the public had even fully processed what he had revealed.
There is a part of human nature that actually wants to be a part of that, because it's trickery. You're going, hey, we're really getting over on these people. We're doing this in a sophisticated, smooth way, and it feels very Hollywood. You get a sense of accomplishment.
His passport was revoked mid-flight. The plane landed in Moscow, and there, in a country he had never intended to live in, Edward Snowden has remained for over 12 years. Then came the moment that exposed the entire charade. In January 2025, Tulsi Gabbard, a politician who had spent years publicly praising Snowden as a brave whistleblower, sat before the Senate Intelligence Committee during her confirmation hearing for Director of National Intelligence. She did not agree with what he did. The woman who had defended him as a hero now positioned herself as the guardian against the next whistleblower because that was the price of power. It was a miniature version of the same betrayal Snowden had exposed in the first place. The gap between what people say when they have nothing to lose and what they say when everything is at stake. And the system Snowden exposed, it didn't retreat. In April 2024, Congress renewed and expanded Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the very legal authority that enabled much of the mass surveillance Snowden revealed. The FBI still conducts millions of warrantless searches of Americans' communications every year. And in 2026, the Trump administration is actively attempting to build what security researchers are calling a master database, a centralized repository of the most sensitive personal information the government holds on every individual American. Not a reform of the surveillance state, an upgrade. Snowden showed us the machine in 2013. He named its programs, exposed its methods, and proved that the government had been lying to its citizens on an industrial scale. And the response? After the outrage faded, after the headlines moved on, he lives in Moscow. He has a son born in exile. He writes to over 152,000 subscribers about the world he tried to change. He has never seen American soil since the day he boarded that flight to Hong Kong. The government that trained him considers him one of the most dangerous men alive. Not because he gave secrets to enemies, but because he gave the truth to the public, and the public did not do enough with it. The question that should keep you awake is not whether your government is watching you. Snowden already answered that. The question is what you are going to do about it. And like any story still unfolding, there is no clear ending yet, but it has already begun. This is Dark History.